Alright, so flipping it over, I didn't have, I guess, a big enough gap. I kind of, or I didn't just burn, I didn't melt through, I didn't get full penetration. So I'm going to just go ahead and throw a little bit on this side as well. Alright, so on this one I clearly did not get the top edge kind of fully welded where I wanted, but I've got a lot of buildup and all that welding definitely would have tempered out the blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this over to a little belt sander that I have real quick, clean up the remaining material on here, and then we'll give it a little flex. Alright, so this here is, you know, the ground off, and the blade it's going to distort a little bit on you, and hopefully if your weld is flexible enough, and what I did up top here, let's see if we can get you in there and so you can see the top is, I just smoothed out the top because, you know, the weld's not, you're not going to get a good weld necessarily all the way across straight. So I smoothed that out so that there's no stress riser, particularly if you're cutting through a thick piece. Say this is on the bandsaw and you're cutting through a thick piece and this blade's all going through material. If you left a little bit of that on there, that's something it might catch and just tear, and that's instantly going to break your blade. So anyways, with that, let's you know, just give it a go. You know? And that's typically what you, I mean, these blades are going to be a little bit stiffer in a, because they're not intended to super flex with in a hacksaw. They're intended to be straight. They don't have to flex over a wheel like on a bandsaw. So, but I mean, that's more or less, that's it for this one. And then set it back up for this next one here. Alright, so this one I got full penetration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back over and grind some on it. bring it back. It's not the greatest. In fact, kind of got a couple teeth missing, so it wouldn't even work. It wouldn't work so hot on thin metal, where like if you're cutting a really thin piece and you got a couple teeth missing, every time it gets to that point, it's going to catch and bump up on the next tooth, and then it's going to tear off that tooth, and it's shock loading your blade when it does that. So harder materials do not like shock loading. So I'm going to grind this and come back. Damn, if that's that coffee cup. Just to give you an idea, I'm sure the factory is, if they're actually using a decent blade welder, this is theirs. I mean, they didn't fully grind necessarily all the weld flash off, but they did a decent job on it. And that's their inside. So, compared to me, who I have not done this in years, that is me. And again, like I say, I kind of smooth out the top. I definitely took a tooth off in the weld, which is not good. That's the inside. And so flexibility of it and tension. This one probably would not last very long on the saw, I'm going to tell you that. But as far as flexibility, there. It's I mean, I was bent like that before that thing actually broke, and to be honest, looking at it, if you look at, let's see if I can't, I mean, don't need that side. Here, just to give you a decent view. It didn't even break in the weld, so I mean, yeah, where it's at, it was probably annealed, or maybe not necessarily annealed, but it may have been a little hardened out there. I didn't do too much of an annealing with the TIG torch because I knew that grinding it would give it a bit of an anneal, or I'm sorry, a temper, not anneal. But the weld itself is flexible and it's got good tensile strength. What's going to kill it is any little stress riser that you let it have. Like I say, having a couple of teeth missing, every time that this next tooth hits the material, it's going to shock load the blade. Every time, if you don't get a decent grind, if you don't flash the grind off, if you don't grind the flash off, then it's wider than the set of your teeth, and that's friction after the blade is going through the material. That's friction that it's going to help bind, and it's going to heat it up, and once it gets heated up, it softens, and then it's going to break. If you don't smooth out the top edge and you leave a little nick mark up there or something, when that goes through, it may catch the material as it enters the material, and if it doesn't shock load or break off that little spot, it's going to break your blade. So, not gonna lie, there's an art to this. I'm by no means an artist. And but it's very doable to do it this way. I would recommend you use, like I say, a stainless steel 309 typical, and if you have good welding practice and you can get a decent grind on it to remove any of the excess, and you can get a good blade. I'm sorry, I'm up here. You can get a good blade. But all you really have to do is have something that's flexible, because it's just got, I mean, This is the factory one, and it's all, the blade has to be able to kind of form itself around the wheel on the bandsaw, and that's more than what that wheel is. And then from there it's under tension. The wheels are pulled apart from each other as it goes through the part, and so it straightens itself out. But you know, while we're here, since this is the factory weld, we're just going to go ahead and bend it. All right, and if I were to look, I don't know if this camera will focus this well, but if I were to look at the teeth on this side here, you can see it broke right through the weld. Why it did that, I mean, clearly you've seen that it was way past where it should have ever been, so it's good, you know. But the reason why it broke there is that when they weld these together, they're using just the resistance method that butts them together. You know, they heat up and then you force them together and then you grind off that flash. Well, in doing that, you're not at, like the 309 stainless steel that I added is a very stretchy material, so it's going to stretch and stretch and stretch, and then this material, this 1095 blade that does not want to stretch, it's going to be the first to go no matter what. But so mix that property in that the 1095 will break first, and that's a weld that has no additional filler metal. Basically, that's your weak point. So I mean, let's go over here. This is just the blade. I mean, that's good. I mean, I would expect it to break. Honestly, I would be very disappointed in the idea if it's 1095 steel, which grinding, I can tell you, is definitely a higher carbon steel. I would be very disappointed if this would be able to fold over and just bend itself, because it's not its material, it's not its quality. But anyways, here's my video, how to TIG weld up on your bandsaw blades. It's doable, and I hope that it helps anybody out there that wants to try and do this themselves. Just remember, you're going to need a lot of practice and a TIG welder. So there you have it.